is being used as a replacement for animal therapy in nursing homes, which is really kind of awesome.
So she built planets on Earth, you guys.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Museum of Science, Boston, and of course, our very special program tonight, Deconstructing the Fitness Industrial Complex. I'm James Monroe. My pronouns are he, him, and I am the senior producer of adult programs and theater experiences here at the museum. Really, all that means is that I get the pleasure of welcoming you all to this amazing evening of dialogue and conversation. It's so great to see so many of you here with us in person. Thank you for coming out and being here with us in Connors Theater. A huge hello to all of our friends who are tuned in online. Thank you for your patience as we navigated some weather and traffic here in Boston. We appreciate you tuning in. And tonight we are here to celebrate the release of this incredible new book, Deconstructing the Fitness Industrial Complex. And we have with us tonight its 3 editors and 3 of its contributing authors who are going to take the stage in a few moments for an evening of conversation and readings. And we just want to start things off with a huge thank you to all of them. 5 of them made the trip to Boston specifically for tonight. And yes, and we're just really thankful that they're allowing us to share their work and this conversation on our stage tonight. And this evening is a part of our current winter-spring season of adult programming at the museum. We actually are at the tail end. We have 1 event left after tonight. Tomorrow night is the return of our ongoing drag series in the planetarium, Coleslaw's Corner. There are still a few tickets left, so you can check that out by going to our website at mos.org/adults. Or by picking up one of our season mailers on the way out. We also just announced our summer season, which will be kicking off in June, just a few weeks. So make sure you check out all those offerings as well. Now, after their conversation tonight, our guests will have a chance to take questions from all of you. If you have a question for them at any time, whether you're watching at home or here on site, you can submit that by going to slido.com, slido.com, and entering the code Deconstructing Fitness, all one word, just as it appears or will appear on the screen. I see it's not there now, but we'll get that fixed. There we go. Magic. Thank you so much, tech crew. You can go there and submit your questions. I need to thank our friends at the Lowell Institute for their ongoing support of the adult programming. Without them, we would not be here tonight, and this event would not be free for all of you. So a huge thank you to everyone at the Lowell Institute. But now, please join me in making some noise and welcome to the stage our very special group of panelists.
You over there? I can't really. Greetings, everyone. Hi, how are y'all doing today? My name is Justice Roe Williams. I am a fitness coach. I like to say I am my mother's child. You know, I was born in love, and I maintain and I hold that love as a foundation of everything that I do. So I guess I'm going to read the land acknowledgement and get us into this. Mm-hmm. So we acknowledge that this event is being hosted on the ancestral territory of indigenous nations who are the continuous stewards of this land. Fitness for All Bodies, and this event is located on the land of the Massachusetts, the Pawtucket, and their neighbors, the Nipmuc and the Wampanoag peoples. We recognize the ongoing care and relationships that these indigenous nations have maintained with this land. And we, excuse me, I can't even. We extend our gratitude as we live and work as respectful guests upon their territory. We encourage each of you to learn about and amplify the contemporary work of the indigenous nations whose land you are now on, and to support indigenous sovereignty and cultural work in all the ways that you can. So I know Fitness for All Bodies, we like to start with a land acknowledgement, and I believe that I'm going to share today that acknowledgement is just one step. We have to think critically about the ways that we are supporting marginalized communities, the way that we are supporting those who are oppressed, especially the indigenous. I believe that we are taught fear. Love comes, it's natural, it's connection. Our desires and our ideas, our bodies, are sites of colonization. We are separated from ourselves, our own identities, as we are separated from each other under a white supremacist, cis heteropatriarchal, capitalistic society. Our lives are scripted by whiteness, and our bodies have been acculturated by westernized colonization. We are masked through our social norms, believing in the roots of whiteness as true, authentic pieces of ourselves. The fitness industrial complex brings to light the ways that white supremacist culture continues to separate us within our own bodies and the larger body that we're connected to, which is our community. I'm going to read a section of this book. Always jumping into and out of boxes. In both my life and my activism, I have always been asked to separate my identities and prioritize which fight is most important to me. When I felt silenced in one community, I would find another and still feel disconnected within it. I felt like I always had to put on the performance of normacy. Growing up, I felt this drive to connect, even though I had always been pushed into separating the pieces of my identity. This separation is a tool of a white supremacist culture, or a culture of the colonized that has been used as a weapon against our bodies throughout time. Growing up, I felt overwhelmed by the conflict I felt inside myself. I believe one of the hard things about body image is that we give other people authority to define who we are and to determine our worth in this world. I internalized negative ideas about being Black, about being a Black woman, about being queer, about my transition, about being a Black man, and how all of this connects to the ways that I move both in my body and in this world. I internalized so much conflict from the messages I received about my body growing up. I never understood that I would be able to break free from the chains of my performance of gender in relation to my sexuality and being Black. I never understood that freedom was wearing whiteness and Black skin, and what that meant about how I valued myself. I jumped in and out of boxes. This performance made me feel safe and allowed me certain freedoms. What I was learning about myself in that white face was self-hate under the guise of feeling valued. We are all in search of the American dream that says we deserve God's gifts, but only if we are white, cisgender, heterosexual, male, possess capital, and have an able body to get you there. In this lies we all exist, and inside I knew this performance was killing me softly. What I learned about my body didn't feel true in the ways that a caterpillar is just a caterpillar. I was born into black skin and tossed into pink pajamas to parents living below the poverty line. I was my mother's daughter and daddy's little girl. But to me, I just was. I existed in all of the ways until that identity limited the way that I saw my own blackness and who I could be in this body. To the world, I was some poor black family's little girl. I was nothing. And as a result, I erased my body and how I experienced my body. Much like Pinocchio, I became a puppet, not living, but performing in this body. Throughout my childhood and into my adulthood, I conformed to ideas and existed in ways that were not true. I turned to self-destructive behaviors as a means to numb the pain of erasure. I believed I was the problem. And this was reinforced by my parents, church, school, and what I saw on TV. The options for poor black children during the 70s and 80s were limited to the service industry, sports, or entertainment. And then the lucky ones who got out of the ghetto. I now see this as the foundation for my need to exist in a collective, as a whole community. I now know what I was told does not have to be the truth. This idea became my cocoon of trust and began the process of changing the narrative in my life. Want to pass it?
I have to now introduce myself after Justice read that. So. I'm Roc Rochon, happy to be here tonight. I'm a cultural worker, I'm an organizer. I like to bring people together and I like to help people tell their stories.
My name is Lawrence Koval. My pronouns are he, they. I'm a sports scholar, and I've worked in the fitness industry for about 10 years now. And I became connected through this project through working with Justice in Fitness for All Bodies, as well as Roc. And that led me to get to meet other contributors, such as the folks that are going to introduce themselves after me. And I'm just looking forward to our discussion today, and thank you all for being here.
My name is Damali Fraiser. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a black woman raising black women. I am a kettlebell coach and nutrition coach. I'm super grateful for being here. I'm Canadian, y'all. I came out from Brampton, Ontario, Canada, and I feel especially proud and privileged to be in this space with such powerful people who have transformed and impacted my life in so many ways. And I look forward to continuing to open conversation about fitness and what it means to us all.
Lovely. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Marcia. I'm a physical therapist and certified yoga teacher from Florida. Pronouns she, they. I'm happy to be here. I'm also the co-host of the podcast Disabled Girls Who Lift. And I don't really have a story to tell. I'm going to read a paragraph. I learned that disability, like gender, resides on a spectrum of possibility that cannot be narrowly defined. Disability, like gender, is not a concept that can be split into two separate boxes. There's a lot of gray area. Disabilities can be seen or unseen, physical or mental, or both. Disabilities can happen before birth, during birth, in adulthood, or all of the above. The same exact disability or illness in one person may present differently in another. The same exact medication or treatment that works for one person is horrible for the next. With that in mind, we can't create narrow expectations for what people can or can't achieve. There is absolutely no way to tidily put disability in a box.
Hey y'all, I'm Kanoelani Patterson. I'm from Oklahoma. I am a social worker and therapist, mainly children's therapist. And I got connected to this project through the many things that I've done with Justice over the years, from like online, different online discussions and panels. And as some people may know, I'm also I'm a fat power lifter, so I do that. So I am really I am overwhelmed with happiness and joy just being able to be in community with all of you today, and thank y'all for coming.
I'm gonna read some more because I had to take my direction from Lawrence.
You're doing amazing.
Thank you. Our bodies are our movement. Through the stories and experiences of trainers, coaches, and body workers from different backgrounds, we hope you are able to contextualize the effects of the fitness industrial complex on all bodies. This is a framework, excuse me, I created to name the fitness as an industry acts systemically to both produce and ideologically maintain dominant body cultures. Bringing together these voices of activists within the fitness industry who are deconstructing and re-envisioning how we experience and understand fitness as it presently exists. This book shows the ways in which we are all connected in this fight to redefine fitness as a practice or a ritual for all bodies. The concept of fitness for all bodies allows us to explore and discuss our differences in connection to the larger structures that oppress us by forcing us to conform to white, supremacist, cis-hetero, patriarchal, capitalistic ideas. Fitness as a practice has become centered around one's appearance or aesthetic versus defining whole body wellness for ourselves. This erased the unique needs of the individual while selling the lie that members of society must meet certain artificial criteria of health by any means necessary. Between social media and traditional forms of media, we are constantly being fed this toxic ideology of not only what it means to be fit, but to look fit, much less participate in fitness. We develop damaging beliefs about our own bodies and their acceptability, thus far buying into the idea that there is only one way to be fit. It's to be young, lean, and muscular. The fitness industrial complex thrives on the stigma it creates against bodies that don't meet this standard. That is the majority of all bodies.
Thank you so much for doing so much reading, Justice. I know that we all appreciate it. But that connects exactly to, I think, the first question that we're wanting to consider today, and probably a reason why so many people are here to discuss it, which is, how is fitness political? Why is it important to understand the politics of fitness and the fitness industrial complex? This is one, obviously, with the title of the book, one of the main things that we're here to talk about today is, what is the fitness industrial complex? How is fitness political? And we'll go on to talk about why that's important for gym owners, trainers, et cetera, to talk about. So yeah, does anyone want to take the floor first?
I'll shoot. I'm ready to rip. So fitness is political because how do you do fitness with your body? And the body is political. So we can't avoid that. We can't pretend that that's not true. We can't, join a CrossFit, take a yoga class, and pretend that anyone that walks through the door is going to have a great time. It's not true. It simply isn't. There are biases that people have. There are fears that are taught, like Justice said, it's taught, ingrained. There are standards that people have, whether or not they realize it. And that alone is political. Because the aim of the separation, of the biases, of putting a tier and a hierarchy to everything is to separate us. And it make us think that this group is less than, this group is better, this one has a higher moral standard, oh, she's skinny, she's healthy. And we create all of these categories that keep us apart.
I also would add, at the beginning of this program, Justice read parts of a land acknowledgement, and I think as he acknowledged, that's really important, and it's the bare minimum of what we can be doing or should be doing in terms of land back. So we have bodies, as Dr. Marcia has just outlined, moving on unceded land, where colonization is this ongoing structure, where Black bodies were enslaved. You can't run from the politicalness of that. And to say that fitness or sport is apolitical, I think would be ignoring something that's right in front of us.
Big facts.
Absolutely. And I think the thing that I think a lot when talking to people about fitness who may be, potentially unfamiliar with these topics is that a lot of us just step into a gym and we might have an idea, a preconception of what that looks like and what it should look like. Does it include the treadmills? Who is in there? What do their bodies look like? What should their bodies look like? And an important element of that, just like you're speaking to in terms of, again, this land that has been colonized and what has been done to bodies throughout history, is also the creation of this idea of the standard body and how that has been taught to us from a young age through the way physical education has been created. And that goes back to, the way before the 1800s, but our modern conception of it to the 1800s of when sport was being developed, when fitness was being developed, all within this concept of what the body should be, which is to aspire towards a white supremacist, eugenics-based ideal.
I think it's funny because when we email each other, we're very connected. We've been emailing each other as authors in a book. And actually, only the editors had the opportunity to read the book, right? To read the whole book as a whole. And the authors got the book recently, as the world did, and they're reading it and they're realizing that we're all saying the same thing. We're all in alignment with who the enemy is, right? And what I find my purpose is I find that, it's crazy. I'm very blessed that I have my mother's genes. Because I'm about to turn 49 in August, and I know I don't look it. I look good. You know what I'm saying? I look good. Thank you. You know what I mean? Because people tell me that. They're like, you're 49? I'm like, yes, I am. I'm going to accept that. But in all of the work that I've done, I felt like, even in my reading, that I've had to prioritize the pieces of my life in order to find value in little snippets. Because the thing about white supremacy is that it separates us from each other. And it has us focused on one element of ourselves because that's the only thing that's allowed to be discussed in that moment. And what I found in all of the activism, I did political prisoner work. I did work within the queer community. There's a lot of people here that's worked with me, organized with me, like marched with me to free Mumia. And in all of that, I had to be an element of myself. I could not be my whole authentic self. So in black spaces, I had to fight for black things, but you know, black people, we are trans, right?
Hello.
We are queer. We are disabled. But that is not discussed in these spaces as a priority within the discussion of liberation. When I go to queer spaces, white queer people are racist towards me. And we're not able to discuss how racism is held systemically within queer communities. Because who defines these ideas? White supremacist culture defines it for all of us. And what I want to read is, I want to read the definition of the fitness industrial complex, but this doesn't notice my face. I'm too young for that. It's like, you're going to need to put in your code. Good thing I remember it, right? No, I'm joking. The fitness industrial complex defines and maintains power over our bodies through the lens of privilege. These mainstream ideas teach us what it means to be fit and well in our bodies, determined by race, gender, identity, ability, and body shape. These mainstream ideas reinforce stereotypes about the identities and bodies of BIPOC, queer, poor, and communities with disabilities. The fitness industrial complex is maintained by private companies that gain huge profits from diet and fitness culture, as well as the propaganda it spreads about health and wellness, the increasing influence of athletic bodies in sport, and eliminating any social dissent to prevailing ideas about bodies, health, and wellness that illuminate our true experience of the industry. So our bodies, all bodies in this room, is erased from the idea of being fit. That idea is used to mold us into whiteness, a wantingness, right? Through aesthetic, through this idea of power. I was powerful before I could pick up a weight. Shit, I'm black. What you talking about? You know what I'm saying? So we need to be able to connect. I'm tired of walking into spaces, disconnecting my body to feel comfortable for you. No more. Sorry.
Well, and I think, Justice, you're talking about this kind of, this rigid, you're talking about a structure, a system, and institutions. And going back to this physical idea of physical education and curriculum in schools, you know, I don't know in Canada if it's the same, but in the US, you typically, if you came up in the school system, you typically had a PE exam, a mile run, you know, a stretching or flexibility exam, all these things that we learn to measure ourselves from at very young ages. Well, the system is doing that. So we are already in this comparative notion of trying to fit ourselves into this frame of white supremacist culture, ideology in terms of the body. So it happens when we're so young and when we might not understand the politics of it, right? And that becomes ingrained time and time again through the images that we see and consume in school, through the media, et cetera, in the healthcare system, you know.
Yeah, who's in the books when we're children, right? Who are we reading? Like, when's the first time you ever seen a wheelchair? Like, you know? Or the size of a kid. Every kid somehow is magically able-bodied and skinny in every book you ever read. Even when you go to the doctor's office, you know, everyone is magically, like, smiling and happy in a certain shape. Like, how'd this happen? And it makes you feel some type of way, because you look and you're like, that's not me, but I guess everybody else is like that, so here I go.
I wonder how we can, like, if people have a concept of separating politics from fitness, when fitness is bodies and bodies is politics, And as you said, like once I had the book in front of me and I like read the stories, there were several threads, including like my own, around grief. And then I come back to thinking about when I go into an office place and then they tell me that I can only have 3 days to grieve. And it's only for these particular roles in your life, not after pregnancy and infant loss, or not after so many ways that we grieve our bodies. And then we bring those bodies into fitness space and expect them to separate from that experience. It doesn't align.
And I want to go back to what Roc was saying about like the concept of PE. Like I remember like vividly like that being like the first place I experienced true trauma was being weighed in front of all of these other kids. And that set with, I mean, again, I vividly still remember it. So it's still in my, like, it's been imprinted already in my DNA as something traumatic that happened to me. And in some places, they're still doing that with kids today. So at what point, you know, we say that we care about the kids, but at what point do we actually care about them?
Facts.
Yeah, I feel like this actually starts to connect a little bit with our next question.
Yeah.
Because again, it is all connected. Is why do you think this is important information for coaches, gym and studio owners, and those within the fitness industry?
Well, I think I want to kind of boost what Damali said. Is again, it's easy. It's easy to just go with whatever already sells. It's easy to just say you want to lose weight, you want to lose fat, you want to get shredded, you want to tone your arms. It's easy to do that. But if you're going to break away from that, not only realizing that bodies are political, but realizing that bodies exist in separate spaces. Like the person coming to your class might have had a miscarriage, and they might be carrying that in a certain way. Like we can't pretend that only one part of us shows up, and it shouldn't be that way. So I think this book also humanizes people's clients. Like it's a business, but if you're just in it to make money, do something else. These are humans. These are people.
And just to tack on to both of what they both just said, that idea of trauma, like in being trauma informed. I mean, as a therapist, like we talk about that, you know, being trauma informed with our clients and stuff like that. But also like how our gym owners, trainers, and people in fitness, how are they trauma informed? Because when we go to the gym, we don't drop our trauma off at the door. We show up as we are. So if we're showing up as we are, then the people there need to be able to understand that we didn't leave this stuff that we're carrying with us, and we didn't leave that at the door, and that we need someone to understand that and validate that, and not tell us to, you know, do 10 more push-ups or lose 10 more pounds, because that's not gonna fix the actual stuff that's going on with us.
You know, we were all talking, a group of us were talking earlier about, you know, how you might walk into a commercialized gym or fitness or wellness center, and there's already this prescriptive set of things that's probably going to happen. If you're working with a trainer, you're going to probably do push-ups and air squats or lunges if you're able to do those things. Again, if the perception is that you have this able body, but there's something inherently wrong with that, because everyone walking into the gym, everyone moving into a space might not fit into that prescription, and there's nothing wrong with that. So the onus becomes on the trainer and the coach and the studio owner and the gym owner, and the responsibility, it's co-responsibility at this point. And I think that question about what, you know, do coaches and fitness owners, or what should they be doing, you all have been asked that question however many times, where someone's expecting you to just give them this answer. But in reality, what does it mean to really look at yourself and interrogate and examine some of the ways that you might be harmful or perpetuating some of this violence, because that's what it is, in spaces that are deemed to be helping someone with their health and their wellness. So it's almost like putting the question back at that studio owner or that person who's working with other bodies. You know, what are you doing to examine and interrogate your own trauma?
Yeah, and I feel like, oh, do you mind? Or do you want to go first?
No, you said something first.
Is I think that, you know, from the very beginning of this book, the work of Fitness for All Bodies, what you've read today in our discussion, it comes back to this idea of relationship, you know, whether that's to the land, our own bodies, each other, because I started to think about, in just what you were saying now, an interview that Justice did with NPR, where I think you were asked where you had been asked a question of, like, you know, again, I think asked a very similar question to this one of what should gym owners, studio owners think about this if they're like opening a gym or a studio, and you said, like, you know, that they should be in that community, they should understand what's going on there, and that's really where this answer starts to get lost on gym owners, studio owners, personal trainers who just want the quick fix, who want just the checklist of, oh, I can say these right words and the work is done. And it's so much deeper, because what each of us in all of our chapters in this book, this much larger conversation, are speaking to are these deep chasms of violence, separation, and it is difficult to heal, and it will go beyond, it will be within our lifetimes and probably go beyond. And it goes into, yeah, being a part of that community that you're opening the gym in. I think a lot about how, because again, having worked in the fitness industry, for some reason or another, the economics of it don't act like any other industry, where everyone is deeply underpaid, being exploited, even their bodies are being used in all of these different ways, and then that's being put on the client themselves. And so it is just like this multi-level need for healing of these relationships, both with ourselves and other people.
Right now, fitness looks like a cookie-cutter model for all bodies, right? It's like the production of all bodies. And my mentor, I'm always going to bring him up because I learned so much from him. He said one of the things that really clicked to me and really, like, significantly, like, kept me on this path, because sometimes when you feel alone, you feel like you're crazy, like you're the only one thinking these thoughts, right? And then it just becomes like a burden, because you don't have support, you don't have people around you that's pushing you to stay inspired to make these spaces, right? And so that's another reason why I see myself as a connector, because we have to be connected to each other in this work in order to see, like history is important. History, the reason why they make history so stale is so that we could lose a sense of who we are in ourselves and not want to learn our history. There's a reason why they do that. Because when we learn our history, we learn that things are malleable. These norms, these systems, we learn actually not only that they're malleable, but we actually learn why they exist, right? So I want us to and I'm not really like the big intellectual. Don't look at me like that because I got a book. I'm really just, I love history because it teaches me that I am powerful, that I am rooted in not white supremacy, but I am rooted, engulfed in collective blackness, right? And that my message is similar to Roc's message, because we're all affected, similar to Lawrence's message, Damali, because we're all affected by the same overarching umbrella of oppression. And so my frustration in my activism is that, I guess in thinking, you know, I'm doing all this work, how am I going to make this larger connection and understanding of social justice beyond difference? How do I get us interwoven and not ripped apart? So I said, you know, one thing that we are all in this world affected by, no matter who we are, and this is dictated by white supremacist culture for everyone: body image. We are all under the puppet of thinking that our bodies should be a certain way, should present a certain way, should exist in a certain role. And that was written for you that is not your natural wanting to be and exist, as we are all creators and wanting to be connected to each other, right? So that's that one thing that my mentor said, is that I learned from bodies. So I am very humbled when my clients walk through the door, because I feel like, wow, you're going to share your most vulnerable thing with me today. And that's your body, right? So I am always humbled by each client that allows me the space to be with them and move with them, right? And connect with them in those ways. And then the other thing is that we as coaches, not these coaches are fire, but coaches within the industry are gatekeepers to this toxic ideology. And the business forces the gatekeepers to maintain these ideas, because that's the only way you're going to make money, right? And that's actually a lie. I don't like to say it like this. I made more capital in community with folks by being honest and authentic than bullying folks, than lying to folks about results, than just doing the same program with everyone throughout the day, because that happens because you're exhausted and you don't see yourself as a creator anymore. It's almost like teachers in schools. You get so burdened by the system, you're so like, help, you know what I mean? That you just end up doing the same thing. You're so exhausted, it's like, oh, here's another body. It becomes like McDonald's or something, one body in, one body out. But we don't forget what I think is most powerful, and what I'm about is that everything that we do, we are in no matter if we think about it or not, we are in relationship with each other. And beyond capital, and beyond this white supremacist culture, we actually are living in a way that we need each other, but we don't look at each other through that need. We had COVID, had to tell us, oh, we have to value the employee, like our slaves. We have to value our slaves because now we can't come out the house. And they got to be able to keep working for us, you know what I'm saying, in order for us to maintain our lives. But now all of a sudden I'm seeing all of these signs up, you know. We need to value each other regardless, because each relationship in this world, you bump into somebody, that's a relationship. You get on a bus, that's a relationship. You talk to somebody at a counter, that's a relationship. That is your overarching community. And we're not doing that just for capitalism. We're doing that for each other, because we also need the means of capital, right? So I don't want us to lose our souls to whiteness. And that's what we're doing. We lose our souls to whiteness because we don't take a moment to think critically about the ways that we all conform to these ideas when they benefit us. We all do that. I do. Not gonna lie to you today, right? But in order to shift that narrative, almost like when we were talking about the indigenous, I'm gonna stop, y'all. Y'all know me. My mouth be like blah, 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 blah. I'm gonna stop. But acknowledgement is not the only thing that's gonna move. I'm glad that you acknowledge me, but if I don't see a shift in the narrative, then we're not truly doing the work of liberation. If we are separating ourselves from each other, even to find safe communities, because we bubble in those communities and we act like we're not talking to each other. So we assume that these communities that are separated, know, right? No, whiteness has separated us so that we don't know, so that we can keep fighting each other, right? So we have to become the overarching collective of community that we truly are, beyond white supremacy.
Can I add something about the gatekeeping? Because I'm processing.
You know that's right.
I'm processing.
Said a lot of things there.
Right? Right? how many of you folks are fitness professionals in this room? Anybody, show of hands? A couple of people.
Oh,
nice. Okay,
Yeah.
a few.
Nice.
Lovely. So maybe for folks who aren't, you may not realize like what the processes of being hired as a coach or trainer. And so it just gave me pause when he mentioned gatekeeping, because if you go to apply for a role to be a fitness professional, they're going to say, are you certified? Do you have this credential? And each of these credentials teaches repeatedly a prescription of how to be the default. And that's enforced over and over and over again, that you are required to meet this standard in order to be a fitness professional, and then those people creating those standards are enforcing into a default. Mm-hmm. This work is not going to prescribe for you. It's going to give you a collective of expertise and experiences and ask you, do you see me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. It's not going to tell you these are the rules, and then if you can do 1 through 10, then therefore you are the best fitness professional in the world. I am already the
Yeah, that's right.
Let's go. But that's what I feel like when you said gatekeeping. I'm like, that's it. It's like this whole system and cycle, and then pushing folks, and then when they're not doing a good job, they think, well, it's because I have to make people fit the default, and they're not fitting, so I have to do a better job and keep forcing it over and over and over again. But you're going to see in here those experiences and those, some trauma, some joy, that are setting aside those defaults. And every fitness professional needs to experience that at some point in their journey.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. There's something I want to say too before we have to close, just because it's important, because we're talking about bodies, and there is not, in the United States, this national, I would say, manufactured, coordinated attack on trans people and non-binary people, and I really think that this is important, and we can't do a full lesson here, but to think about sex testing, and I challenge everyone to think about sex testing and what that means, especially for our intersex siblings, and honestly, just anybody, whatever your chromosome makeup is. But if there's the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, or the World Athletics, all the acronyms in the world, I don't know them all, but they are sex testing. They keep changing the way the tests work out. So first it's gonna be chromosomes, right? What's your makeup? Then it becomes blood testing. Then it becomes, HRT. So if your testosterone levels are deemed too high, whatever that even means, then they're going to lower your testosterone levels. And this is specifically happening with women in the global South. So we need to name that, and not only women in the global South, but specifically, particularly women in the global South. And that is all a part of this conversation in terms of who are these people, the International Olympic Committee boards, the World Athletic boards? Who are the people? That's the question. Who do you all think the people are making these decisions? White, cisgender, able-bodied men that are telling the world who a quote-unquote woman is. And I think that we need to interrogate that more and really see it for what it is, that there is a board of people who get to change the pendulum of who gets to participate and who isn't.
Absolutely, yeah.
I really want to give a full lesson, but we don't have time for that.
I was like, all of us, but especially Roc and I, would love to give a lesson on that, because I think the thing that we want people to step away from this conversation with about this book is that this is just the beginning of a conversation. It is about fitness, but it's about everything else, because it comes down to body politics, it comes down to power, it comes down to white supremacy. And what we're seeing, like you're saying, with the sex testing, the anti-trans bills that are happening through sport, bathroom bills again, is that it's about, is about naturalizing, again, this idea of the standard body, of what a man, of what a woman is, in a way that is always going to enshrine whiteness, is always going to enshrine white supremacy. And it's important that, because I see even my own trans siblings, and I completely understand why this is where the conversation goes about, oh, this athlete has been on HRT for this long. You know, no, they actually fit these rules. The thing is, the goalpost is always going to be moved, because it isn't about that. It is, again, about this culture of white supremacy. And the reason that these laws are happening is because, like you're saying, these people in power are threatened by people who are not from the majority being engaged in culture making, because that is what fitness is. Yes. That is what sport is about culture making around bodies and changing what that power means to this relational healing way of relating to one another, and it scares the shit out of them. And that is what I think we want everyone to step away with, is to connect with each other and to know that it is all connected, and that means that doing one small thing to shift it changes it all.
Yes.
Oh, okay. And so, is there any thoughts before we move to the Q&A?
I just wanted to add another example of a white man just making up a rule. If people know where the BMI comes from? That's another one. It has nothing to do with my body, but yet, you know, when I walk into a space and they decide my BMI is morbidly obese, and that changes their view of me and their decisions of what I should be capable of, what I should do, and what I should want to do, based on some made-up thing from a math guy. What's that have to do with me? Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so we do have some wonderful questions from the audience. If you want to keep submitting them, feel free to. But one of our first questions is, Justice mentioned that sports is one of the few career options presented to Black people and youth, but we also see that the fitness industry erases Black bodies. How does that contradiction affect y'all's work?
Ooh, spicy.
I think it all is boiled down to the exploitation of Black bodies, like how Black bodies are still steered in this direction from slavery, of being utilized for entertainment for white people. You know, so in my work, you know, I think there's whiteness is, when I think about whiteness, I think about water, right? This is like a weird scenario. I think whiteness as water, right? And I think white people have the resources, or white people in power have the resources to remain under that water and exist under that water with no problems, right? And then I think of us as folks like swimming, trying to get the air, you know, and we're surviving, but we just swimming, trying to get the air. And slowly but surely, what whiteness does, if you align to it, they give you air. They're like, oh, you want to be like me? I'll give you some air. You know what I'm saying? And that's what whiteness does to all of us, right? But typically, to Black bodies since slavery, right? I feel like our desires have been colonized so much that we don't even understand in some ways what liberation is. And that liberation looks like whiteness. Right? And that's a hard thing to say, right? Because there's been liberation movements for a long time, but when I look at how liberation happens and we're not connected, then I think about why it moves so slowly. Why we're at 2023 and we're still talking about bathrooms, and we're still talking about Black Lives Matter. And I always tell people, if you have to remind someone something, then it actually really means that that body doesn't matter. So when are we going to move from just saying that to shifting into a way of moving together to prove it, that our connection to each other matters, right? So I'm just going to say that because I've talked so much.
No,
and I'm just going to pass it
I
over
think
to
that's
the
a
next
great
person.
I think that was great.
That's a great answer.
I would add too, especially in terms of sport, that's more my wheelhouse, but I see that, you know, sport and fitness are connected. I think there's a different way that the industries commodify and exploit Black bodies in sport. You know, extracting that labor to make how much money in the WNBA, NBA, well, not that much money in the WNBA, which is a different story, another problem. The NBA, the NFL, these sporting industries or sporting teams that we deem elite sport. And the fitness industry or health and wellness, I would imagine their I would be curious about their marketing strategies. I personally don't see a lot of Black bodies being marketed. And I think that goes back to racial power and racial stereotypes about bodies, going back all the way to like the Black brute, that type of imagery. So that's just a tidbit. I think I switched the question, but
No,
that's my
that's it.
response.
I think that also you could see that in how many college kids were fighting to be able to get paid to do ads and make their own money, because, you know, why wouldn't people want that? Because it gives them power.
That's right.
We don't want them to have
That's
power.
right.
We just want to use them.
That's right.
And I think what flashes in my mind when you read that question was like, if y'all are familiar with the NFL Combine, watching that has always reminded me of the slave auction block, because that's what that is.
That's right.
That's what it is in like real time.
That's right.
You know, let's see how fast he can run. Let's see how far he can jump, and just all this other stuff. You know, let me entertain you.
That's right.
But, you know, they don't care like what it does to your body, what it does to your mental health, the concussions. Like, they don't care about any of that. All they care about is what they are getting from you.
That's right.
And then like how much they can get you to assimilate. Like I talk about that a lot we talk about that a lot in this work, is like if they can get you to assimilate and act like them, then they know they got you.
Yes.
Because, you know, it's normal for us to want that, to want safety.
Yeah.
You know, and assimilating gets you safety.
Yes.
But what it doesn't get you is like your own mind,
Yes.
because that's what you give up when you assimilate.
Preach. I love you, man. I love you.
We have a number of amazing questions from folks. I feel like a lot of them are coming down to this question of, I think we'll be able to answer really just one more question, I think, with the time. And honestly, what a lot of this comes back to is how to be involved in this work, whether it's supporting us, the book, this idea of deconstructing the fitness industrial complex, whether that's in people's like personal practices, say they don't have a gym that they can comfortably go to, all the way to maybe they are professionals who are wanting to engage in this work. What do you feel like that looks like? Or like what would you advise to folks who are here and watching?
I feel like the first step is what's on your algorithm, because you control that, right? Like when I pull up my phone and I search on Google, I'm not going to get the same thing that Randy, who watches Fox News, gets, right? So being purposeful and intentional. Don't do anything without intention. Who are you following? How many people do you know that are deaf, blind, disabled? How many people do you know that are in larger bodies, that are Black, that are brown, that are South Asian, that are Chinese, that are like, who are you following on your phone? And when you pull it up and you pop up your Instagram or your TikTok or whatever you're into, who's popping up? Because you can control that.
Yes.
I would also add to what you said with the question that I like to ask people all the time is, what are you willing to give up? Because this work doesn't work if you don't work. So if all you do is, my favorite is like listen and learn. If all you do is listen and learn, then you have wasted your time, and you probably wasted our time too. I'm just saying. So what are you willing to give up? So if you're somebody that is in a position of power that can give a more marginalized person an opportunity, you should be doing that. You know, all these book deals and other stuff, if you already have that stuff, why aren't you giving that to somebody who doesn't have it and wants it?
Yeah.
That's right.
I want to add on to that too, like sharing, but attribution matters. So,
Yes.
like as you hear Justice exemplifying, saying, my mentor said, right? you will hear certain names continuously repeated over and over again, and they're elevated to authority because white male XYZ, but also because you repeatedly understand that they are the ones who initiated this or defined this method or whatever it was. But then when Black, Brown, Indigenous people share a voice, expertise, lived experience, generations of lived experience, suddenly you forget their name.
Yes.
So you need to call their name, say this is where I heard it, don't colonize it, don't take over and be like, oh, I heard that thing, so now this is my new mantra. Please don't do that.
Don't settle our ideas.
Please don't steal the
Cite
ideas, right? So attribution matters. Start calling in names of even like you consider them your peers. You know, you heard this, it influenced you, it inspired you, it taught you. So take that forward and recognize it just as greatly as education and expertise from that lived experience, and call their name.
I want to add one piece. I want to add, just like oppression happens to us every day, and we encounter it and it impacts our lives every day, right? We have to make this work a daily ritual. Like, it has to be a daily ritual, something that we are doing daily, even if it's self-work. Bell Hooks says we have to think critically about everything. Like, she runs the gamut, but everything. Our experiences, our relationships, that's the only way we're going to shift the narrative. We have to remember we're creators. We don't have to follow someone's script. No one really has to tell us what to do. You know what I mean? We have to go back to natural ways of learning. When I was born, I didn't read a book to learn how to crawl. When I was born, I didn't read a book to learn how to walk. It just happened, right? It happened by what I observed from what was around me. There was no book reading, right? And the love and the nurturing that was placed into building me up into a human being, right? It was relationships. It wasn't books. Books are a tool. They are not the go-to source of information about all bodies. The go-to source is, if I need information about Roc's body, I'm going to talk to Roc. If I need information about Lawrence's body, I'm going to talk to Lawrence. I'm not going to read a book about trans. Lawrence says I'm trans, and I'm going to read a book. I need to get everything about trans people right now because I'm going to work with a trans body. No. Give that body the authority to make decisions about movement for themselves. We have to begin to understand how we are reinforcing even in our liberation practices. I'm gonna repeat that because we do it unconsciously because we find comfort in it. Yeah. But the reality is that practice is just as white supremacy. If I could go to a separate community, if I could go to the trans community and still have racism happen, then we're not doing the work, right? So I think we have to rethink things, think critically, and make it a daily ritual. It does not stop.
I was gonna say, it's always hard to follow you up, Justice. Maybe I'm gonna give I'll give practical advice and then maybe more philosophical advice. The first is, to make sure to follow all of our panelists, everyone who's in this book, and really see who they're following, who they're uplifting, who they're sharing, because what is obviously difficult about doing this work in all of these systems that we've just discussed is it's really hard economically, relationally, et cetera, because of people being so invested in these dominant narratives. So get to know who is in your area that is doing this work and make sure you're putting your resources there, you're aligning with them, you're sharing with them, you're building, again, community, which I think is the thing that we've been emphasizing over and over again. And then I really love what you said, Kanoelani, about what are you willing to give up? I'm gonna speak specifically to other white people in this work, is that whiteness is a culture of hyper-individualism, isolation. It is even in the dominant position of it, of which we gain great privilege and many benefits, it still emotionally scars us, and it relies on the dehumanization of others, which is just no way to live. Philosophically, physically, relationally, it kills everyone in its wake. And I think that that's what's so important to recognize about it, that at first it will feel like, what are you going to lose? What are you going to sacrifice? But there is also so much to gain from it. You gain wisdom, you gain acknowledgement, you gain really just your own humanity back in the process through that healing. And so I've been in fitness spaces where, the only reason I'm even able to be in that space is because I was a cisgender white woman to be, at the beginning of it. And then as I come out, or I see other people who are friends being excluded from these spaces, or I'm starting to be excluded from those spaces, I really see that, if you're to act with integrity, that is really the only thing you can follow, because these categories of dominance, whether that's being white, cisgender, able-bodied, etc., those are vanishing categories. People on the margins will always be cut off in the process, and no one is safe from that at all. And so all we can do is build the community and relationships that will take care of us in the wake of the violence that white supremacy and its legacy leaves us.
I'm going to ask one thing before we end, and it's going to be a cutesy thing because, I like cutesy stuff.
Can I say one thing before you say the cutesy thing?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. This book is so important, and as you said earlier, it's the beginning, right? Yes. It's a part of this larger movement, which you are a big part of. We all are, and historically, you are a very big part of this work. And I just want to say that you hear the buzzword of inclusive fitness or inclusive movement, and we are not advocating to be included in a harmful system, and harmful institutions, and harmful cultures. And if you find that you're going into any space, fitness, wellness, or otherwise, really working to be included, you don't deserve any type of harm. So we're advocating for something that really deconstructs the title, and rebuilds, creates possibilities and liberatory ones at that. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Say that.
So the last thing is going to be a cutesy thing. I literally, everything that I do for my mom, right? And my mom is here today. And I want to make this moment just as special as it has been for me for her. So if you could clap for her, because she's an amazing individual and I love her very much.
Oh, I'm standing for her.
I would not be the person full of love and connection and purpose without this woman's heart. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Let's make some more noise for our panelists, please. Thank you to all six of you for making the trip to Boston, allowing us to share this on our stage tonight, and just congratulations on this amazing book being out in the world. Thank you to all of you for joining us and spending your Wednesday night with us. We are going to say goodnight to our friends watching online. Thank you for tuning in. And because all of you came out tonight, we're going to invite you one level down for a book signing. Our friends